Hello, artists. I am so glad that we have this opportunity to connect in this way, and I want to welcome you to my studio and also where I live as well. Some of the artwork that you see here on this wall is not my work, but work that I've collected. Actually, somebody was throwing this painting away in my building and I captured it, and also I add my own things to it, so I'm making it my own painting. So let's get started and let me share with you what I have planned and what type of drawing lessons we're going to be doing for our time together. So let me tell you what I have in store for today and what kind of activity and lesson plan I put together. But before we do, this is my notebook, and it's a list of the supplies that you're going to need for our time together. And our first section, we're going to do a warm-up drawing. And these are some things that you'll need. You'll need some sheets of paper. They can be copy paper like this, I realize that you may not have all these exact supplies at home that I have, so I encourage you to use whatever you have at hand. Even I have a piece of copy paper, let me just pull it out, that I used has printed on one side, but if one side is blank, you can use that to do this warm-up activity. So whatever you have at hand, I encourage you to use. You'll need a pen and also a pencil. And then we're going to do a second major activity, and we'll go over the supplies when we get to that point. So let me explain to you, what this warm-up activity is. So taking your sheet of paper, remember in artist terms, we use landscape orientation, and when we hold the paper in this way, we called it portrait orientation. So what I want you to do is take your sheet of paper and fold it in half, corner to corner, and placing it on the table, just run your finger over the seam, open it up, and now you have one half section. And you want to take it landscape orientation, folding it in half, placing it on your table, corner to corner, and when you're done, you will have 4 sections to your paper. Now you'll take your scissors and cutting along those folds, cut out the 4 squares. Careful. I'm taking each section now and following the fold, and cut that in half. And you have 1 more squares. So now you have 4 squares that we're going to do 4 different drawings on. And what I'm going to ask you to do is approach the different people who you're living with at this time, and ask them, you want to maybe take, if you have a book or a piece of cardboard, and ask your housemate, whoever you're living with, to just make any type of scribble. But instead of using the pencil, I want you guys to use the pen. So let me find a pen. So if you go up to someone in your home and ask them to draw, give them the pen and ask them to draw any type of scribble on this one sheet of paper. And so it could be something like that, okay? And each person is going to have a different type of scribble. And we talked about lines and wavy lines and curvy lines. So now that your housemate has drawn a scribble on here, I want you to kind of look at this now and look at it from different angles. What happens when you turn it landscape orientation? And what might you notice? Now, maybe if I look at it from this side, what starts to appear? Maybe you might see a face or an animal. But what I want you to do now is to take this scribble and start to add different lines to it so that what you imagine this to be comes into focus. So we're going to take a break right now, and I'm going to start to add my lines, but I want you to use a pencil instead of a pen to make your drawing on top of the scribble. So what we have here are the 4 completed scribble drawings. You'll notice the black marker line was our scribble line, And the thinner line, the pencil line, is what was added to complete our image. Here you see the heavy dark black marker, and the other lines finish off the shape to complete the image. So this is our second part of our lesson and our main activity. So before I get into explaining what I have in mind and showing some artwork for inspiration, let's go over our supply list on what you'll need to gather for this second drawing activity. So I'm calling this an abstract drawing. And so what you're going to need is, again, sheets of paper. Now, whatever you have on hand, again, is what I recommend. Copy paper. I have some cardboard that I found that you can also use. If you have different colors of paper, that's fine. And also what I want to tell you to think out of the box is I've taken a cardboard box that I have, which some crackers came in, and I opened it up carefully. And maybe this could be an opportunity to work on this surface and to draw on this surface. You can cut these flaps away, or you can work individually in individual sections. These are just some ideas that you can, again, use what you have at hand. So back to my list. I went over your options of paper, a pencil, an eraser, and the final step in creating our abstract drawing. Any of these supplies you have, just choose one. Maybe you have some crayons, some colored pencils, markers, or watercolors, but you also need a black marker. And this could look like a medium point Sharpie. Let me open that up for you. Or a fine tip marker you can use, or maybe a combination of both. So these are the supplies that you'll need for this next drawing activity. Let's look at the artwork that I've chosen for our next drawing activity. This is a painting by Joan Miro. He was a French painter. And let's take a look and think about, what do we notice about this painting? What shapes do you notice? What type of lines did the artist use? How about the colors that he chose to paint? Well, hopefully you'll find some inspiration from this painting, and the title of it, as you may see, is called The Garden. What elements of it remind you of a garden? Now, your drawing doesn't have to be about a garden. This is an inspiration. So what I'm going to ask you to do is look at the shapes and come up with your own list of shapes. And how might you change them? Will they be geometric shapes, organic shapes? And what type of lines will you use? So this is my drawing that I created, inspired by looking at Joan Miro's painting, using a variety of shapes and lines and filling up the page. So this is your next step, using a pencil and not making the lines too strong, because if you don't like them, you can always erase them. But again, I want you to create a drawing, variety of shapes and sizes, lines, and as I mentioned earlier, I took my cardboard box and even created a little drawing. So the next step is taking the markers, either the fine tip or the medium tip markers, and once you've created your drawing, go over the lines with a black marker. And as you're going over the lines that you drew, you want to make sure that you cover the pencil, and then maybe you might also want to add some other lines to what you've drawn. Welcome back, and I want to share with you my finished drawings. I've gone over them with the marker, and you may notice if you look closer there are some lines. You can still see the pencil lines. So taking your eraser, and now that the ink is dried, we're going to go in and erase all those lines. So come and take a closer look as I do that, making sure that all the pencil marks are gone. And it's important too to let the ink dry so we don't smear it and smudge it. Okay, so I think I got that one pretty well. A little bit more here, down in this corner, and I'm gonna take this one and look for any marks. And you notice on this drawing, I used my fine tip marker. I decided not to use the medium tip. And this was a fine tip for this drawing. Okay, let me do a little bit more erasing here, clean it up. And again, like I said, maybe you decide to do a smaller drawing and you don't want to do a large drawing. You definitely have those options. We're at this point, and now I want you to think about adding color and think about the medium that is appropriate for the paper surface that I've used. You know, I have the cardboard here, so you're going to want to use a wet medium, watercolor in this instance, because it will keep its shape. Now, I wouldn't suggest using watercolor on this copy paper because the water is going to make it buckle and wavy, and it's not going to look nice. So when you're thinking about medium, but I would use watercolor on this cardboard because it can accept water and it's going to keep its shape. But nothing to say you can't use pencil on this. Marker works fine. But when you're doing your finished work, only choose pencil or marker for whatever you're working on, or watercolor. Don't mix your mediums. So we're going to take a break right now, and I'm going to do some work adding some color to my drawing. And I'm limiting my color palette to green, yellow, and red. And being careful, you know, not to overlap the shapes. Going up to the line, you know, and taking the time to spread the paint around. And again, not using too much water because it doesn't require that, but you know, if you overlap your shapes, that's fine too. Adding some more water to this. And I think I'm going to use red as my background color. And I'm going to put all throughout my drawing. So I finished my background, you know, leaving some areas around the lines unpainted. You know, that's again my choice and your choice. And now I want to start adding the two other colors that I chose to finish off my drawing, and in this case, painting. So I'm going to just take in some yellows, my yellow watercolor, and start to fill in these areas with color. This is the thing with watercolors, you don't need a lot of paint with them. Turn it around so I can reach this. And again, you don't have to use a lot of water either. Filling in these areas and doing some yellow here. I'm going to fill in some diamond shapes with some yellow here. So I'm going to move into adding the different shapes, adding green to the different shapes. Okay, I'm going to put a little dot for the green eye and fill in these different shapes here with green. And notice, since I have enough paint on here, I don't have to dip back into my paint. This brings our lesson together to a close. I've added color to my abstract drawing, and you will do the same using whatever medium that you chose. So let's do a little recap about what we did from the beginning of our abstract drawing. So we're going to start thinking about the variety of shapes and lines that you can use. You're going to choose what paper you want to create for your abstract drawing on, and using a pencil, filling up your space with different shapes and lines. And then once you've done that, you'll go over the pencils in a black marker. Once the ink has dried and you inked in all your shapes, you'll erase the pencil lines, and in the final, think about what colors you want to use to complete your abstract drawing.